Game week 29 team selection is quite possibly the toughest of the season so far for my team, and a big debate on whether to prioritise buying Chris Wood or Erling Haaland, and we got to come to a decision on today's video. So we'll be revealing my team. So as always, if you look forward to it, make sure to drop a like and of course hit that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, a quick recap on how game week 28 went. I ended up scoring 55 points, which I thought was an okay week, but ended up being a red arrow from 97,000 to 113,000. So not an ideal space to be in. Of course, there were just a few real big performers in the likes of Watkins, João Pedro, just to name a few. Unfortunately, the players that I had up against those just did absolutely nothing. You can see here, the only players actually delivered was Munoz with the 6-pointer, and it could have been so much more if he scored that one-on-one late on in the game. Clive with the 5-pointer, again, that could have been so much more with that disallowed goal and generally Bournemouth's attacking play. Salah with a 30-pointer, again, really didn't gain anything from that, and that was it. We got blanks on real big differentials in the shape of Semenyo, Vissa, really didn't step up to the plate. So 55 points, the only saving grace of this game week is that I rolled my transfer just to give myself a little bit of life going into game week 29 and a chance of actually fielding 11 players. So 55 points, red arrow, not great. And going into game week 29, you can see here we do have a few players that are going to blank in game week 29. Those include Munoz, Trent, we have got people like Salah, and of course, we have got Alexander Isak alongside Cunha being suspended and Vandenberg a minute's risk. So we got quite a few players blanking. And of course, we have decided not to free hit with this team. I've discussed that on previous videos, so make sure you do check it out in terms of the rationale behind it. But I will show you in this video a free hit draft that I've built if you were to do so. And of course, the two different directions that I need to take my team. And honestly, I could go either direction. So let me know how many points you scored in game week 28. Let's take a look at the rest of the stuff. So look, we discussed this on the previous videos, in particular the top transfers video, and it all comes down to Erling Haaland in game week 29. I think it's really as simple as that for a lot of managers. You've got to decide whether you want to go down the Erling Haaland route and make sacrifices in your team, or accept you're not going to have him for the next few weeks and keep some of the big guns in your team. So for a little bit of context, in order for me to get to Erling Haaland, I would have to get rid of probably Isak, Mo Salah and Trent in order to get there. I could possibly sell Cunha instead of Isak, but I would probably be scraping the barrel a little bit with my alternatives in the midfield and defender department. And if I am going to sell Mo Salah as part of a combination, I probably do want the best of the best outside of those picks, and we'll discuss that later on in this video. So for me, bringing in Erling Haaland is a big sacrifice to the rest of the team. And we've discussed this in detail, but the main benefit is that you cover up the free hit ownership in game week 29. I still think it will be less than 70%. I don't think it is going to be monstrous. And you get yourself the best captain in game week 29 and game week 30. Alternatives outside of Erling Haaland in 29 include Chris Wood and Bruno Fernandes. I think both of those are fantastic, but I still think Erling Haaland is the best, even though I think Brighton could get a result against Man City. And then, of course, game week 30 at home against Leicester. Now, it isn't a home run. Like, it's a great fixture, but we also need to remember Liverpool will be out of all cup competitions by game week 30, and they'll be at home against Everton. Tough game, Merseyside derby, but would I rule out Mo Salah scoring against Everton at home? I wouldn't at all. So you have to remember that your captaincy at home against Leicester is also going up against the captaincy of Mo Salah. And I do not think it is clear as just Haaland is the absolute definitive captain that game week. I would have preferred Mo Salah maybe having a trickier game, that one, just to really convince me that Haaland is the absolute best pick in 30. So I think Haaland has massive upsides. For my personal team, I will have to make sacrifices in the shape of Salah or Cole Palmer. And obviously, that's the decision that we're coming to right now. I think if you can get to Erling Haaland and it is only free transfers, I probably would do so. I think there is enough upside over the next 2 weeks to take it on, only if you have a wild card available in game week 31 to bring back some key players that maybe you are sacrificing. If you've used your wild card already, then I would struggle to part ways with the likes of a Mo Salah, knowing it is very difficult to go back there. Let me know what you're doing in the comment section. Hopefully I've given enough of an understanding about Erling Haaland, and of course I need to make my own decision on this one. Now, for those managers that are activating their free hit in game week 29, I really do think it is a good strategy, especially if you are stacked on Liverpool players, Crystal Palace, Villa, Newcastle. There's a lot of managers like that. They have good fixtures in game week 30, so you don't necessarily want to get rid of those assets. And the game week 29 free hit makes a lot of sense. So what I've done here is build a draft for you. I'm not doing it myself, but I see the upside. And it's worth noting as well, there are very different ways that you can go about a free hit in game week 29. And I don't even think this is the optimal team. I think there are different avenues to go down. So for example, with this team, I think in order to really benefit from the Nottingham Forest clean sheet or defence, you kind of got to double up on it. So I've gone for the Sells and Aina combination. The obvious omission in the defence is going to be Vardy. The only really reason for me doing that is that I think Brighton are a good team. I think they score, and then on that premise, you're basically backing a Vardy out attack and return, and I just don't see the logic for me to put Vardy out in a free hit if I think that Brighton score. That's the premise first and foremost. Get those clean sheets locked in, and attack and returns are a bonus on top of that. So I don't think Vardy out is an amazing pick for game week 29 free hit. Probably famous last words. I think he's great for game week 30. So we've gone for the combination of Sells and goal, doubled up with Aina for the Forest defence. If you can't afford Aina, I think the likes of Williams is a brilliant alternative. Then we got Gabriel at home against Chelsea and Nori away against Southampton. Now, it's worth noting, look at the defenders on the bench. We got Dalot away against Leicester, which I think is quite a nice differential pick. We also got Kirkez at home against Brentford. The only reason why I haven't got Kirkez in this team is I think Brentford probably do score. Again, then it comes down to we need the attack and returns. Now, I do think there's an argument to go without Gabriel, really go against that Arsenal defence, but you need to understand, if you're free hitting in 29 and you go without Arsenal defence, pretty much every other manager will have Arsenal coverage, and I could see them just beating Chelsea by a 1-0. So I think Arsenal defence is quite a scary prospect to go without, but if you really want to go all in on the free hit, maybe getting rid of Gabriel and go for someone like a Dalot is the ultimate upside chasing. In terms of the midfielders, now I'm not in love with the midfielders in a game week 29 free hit. I think Kluivert and Bruno Fernandes are just absolute locks in your team. I wouldn't overthink it at all. Then I think it is a little bit muddied, the water. People are talking about a Bournemouth double up in midfield. I just don't like Semenyo or Dango as picks at all. So I think Buemo, with the premise of understanding, I've said premise loads of times, with the thought of that it is going to be goals in both the Bournemouth and Brentford camp, I like Buemo as a pick, and we know his ownership is going to be big regardless. So I think he does kind of by default pick himself. It's the fourth midfielder. I've currently got Foden in, but I don't absolutely love it. I don't know whether his game time is going to be brilliant or not. You could go for a Savinho. I think that's quite a nice differential. I've also got Trossard on the bench, who I do think is a bit of a left field pick who could also do well, but the minutes are probably a little bit sporadic. No real understanding of whether they are going to be guaranteed or not, hence why he's on the bench on this free hit team. But again, I think Foden is the perfect upside pick, but you know you're taking a big risk. And then we've got a front three because I can't pick 5 midfielders. We've got Evan Nielsen at home against Brentford. Again, I think there's going to be goals in that game, and I think he's the definition of a great differential because he's just come back from injury. Then, of course, we've got Erling Haaland with the captaincy. No-brainer. If you're going to put him in a free hit, you've got to put the captaincy on him. And then Chris Wood. The ownership is going to be monstrous because those managers that can't get to Erling Haaland are going to captain Chris Wood most likely. And his ownership is going to be over 100%, and quite a scary prospect not having him in your teams. I'm one of those that might not. So that's the free hit team. We got good bench players in Dalot and Kirkez. No Cole Palmer, but I think if you're free hitting, you do go against the Cole Palmer ownership just based on what we've seen with Chelsea and Palmer in general. So let me know who's missing in this Game Week 29 free hit team and if you are going for a free hit. So I think there are a few Game Week 29 questions that need covering off that maybe I haven't done already. So there's 4 here that have been asked quite a lot. If there are any more, let me know in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to those between now and the deadline. So first up, when should a free hit actually be used? Well, I always have kind of like a measurement in my mind. So 6 or less players. So if you're just sat there and your team has literally half of them are blanking, I would use the free hit. Unless, because this season is a little bit different and you can get 5 free transfers, then that might change the outcome a little bit. But historically, 6 or less players, it is just so much effort and points hits to get yourself to a good team. So if you're in that position, I probably would free hit. If you have 7 or more and a few transfers in the bank, then I think you can avoid using the free hit. And the thing as well is that how good is the actual game week? We discussed my free hit team if I were to do so. I think there are good players. I've seen much better weeks to use the free hit. So I don't think the upside is absolutely massive. And that's the big thing that we need to obviously understand with the game week. Is it good enough to take huge points hits? I would probably say no, apart from the likes of Erling Haaland and Bruno Fernandes. And of course, it comes down to your team. Do you actually have 8 or 9 players who are good players? If they're bench options, minutes risk, then I would deem those probably not even picks. So go by that sort of thing. And if you have any specific ones with your team, let me know in the comments. Who are the best Trent replacements? Now, of course, he blanks in game week 29 and he went off injured. And some quotes from Slot suggest they're hoping he could play between now and the end of the season. Doesn't sound great. So I think if you're just looking to keep the money in Trent, go for Vardy out. I think he's a good alternative, but I don't love him for game week 29. I like him for 30. Second place would be Aina. Cheaper alternative is Williams, just to get yourself that Nottingham Forest coverage where their ownership is going to be pretty damn big. Third would be Kirkes. I just prefer the 2 fixtures over that of Aït-Nouri's 2. This game week in isolation, I prefer Aït-Nouri's, and I think Aït-Nouri is a bit more of a goal threat. But I think Kirkes over the 2 with his creativity in that team, and I just rate Bournemouth a bit better, is a slightly better pick than Aït-Nouri. Third up, should you sell Palmer or Salah to fund Haaland? Now, this is not an easy question to answer at all. I do think if you are in a position, and this all comes down to your own personal preference, that you think Erling Haaland is just an absolute essential in your team. And I want to be one of those to say he is not at all, guys. Like, you do not have to have Erling Haaland in your team. Then I think the preferred route is Cole Palmer. I just think the fixture's tricky away against Arsenal. Spurs at home sounds great, but if they got Romero and Van de Ven back, then it could be a slightly different story in that team. And if Nicholas Jackson is not back for Chelsea, I think that dampens Cole Palmer's creativity in general. So I think that's the preferred route. Sell Cole Palmer and then get to Erling Haaland. If you're going to sell Salah, few things. One, consider the value that you're losing out on him. A lot of people bought him in game week 1, still own him. If you sell him and then try and buy him back, you are paying a lot more than what you sold him for. And secondly, I would only do it if you have the wild card available. You're going to want Mo Salah back. That out of all the other cup competitions, full focus on the league. Scary not having Salah long term. So if you're going to sell Salah, make sure you got a wild card available. Finally, who are the top 3 game week 29 captains? We'll touch on this in my own team, but I think if you're going to have Haaland, you got to captain him in game week 29. He is the standout pick. Chris Wood would be second, and if you don't have Haaland this week, that would be my go-to. I wouldn't overthink it. I think he's a good pick, even though the ownership will be monstrous. A third, the differential one, the rank chasing captain, is going to be Bruno Fernandes, and I really do like that one if you want to go there. Don't love Bruno Fernandes for the next 2, because one of those is Forest away, but for this game week in isolation, I think that's a really nice captain. So moving into my game week 29 team selection, I apologise, I don't have the usual graphics that we go on here. The main reason being is I don't know exactly what I'm doing with my team, so I'd much rather show you 2 plans that I am currently debating, and you can roast me in the comments if there is an obvious one. But the first one that we got here is going to be the Chris Wood game week 29 team selection. I know already this is going to be the one that you guys are going to tell me, Nacho, this is the logical pick. This is the one. So I obviously have players that feature in game week 29. We've had a decent update regarding Van den Berg, suggesting that he is going to be available for game week 29. That would be amazing if he can play, because at the end of the day, defenders, you can make a defender transfer, they concede in the first minute, and then they're not really fantastic value. So I think Van den Berg is going to stick around in this team. I'm just going to put everything crossed that he does feature. So with this current move right now, it is what I call the logical move. It's selling Trent and bringing in Vardy out. Now, I discussed the different alternatives. If I'm going to sell Trent personally and bring in somebody for game week 30 as well, they got to have a great game week 30 fixture. And Vardy has that at home against Leicester. So my personal preference, if I was to go down this route and I have all the budget available, would be to do Trent out, Vardy out in. And of course, we got Cunha suspended for the next few game weeks. Not ideal. Of course, the move that would be logical is doing Cunha to Chris Wood and being my captain. Now, the great thing about these moves is that I don't incur a points hit. Of course, if I was stressed about Van den Berg, then I could also make a defensive transfer with the budget I have available. But I feel like I would just rather roll the dice on Vandenberg. Even if he comes on for a 1-pointer, I could easily sell him, bring in Aït-Nouri, and he gets a 1-pointer, and I've taken a -4. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. This strategy here is logical in terms of it gets to Chris Wood, and it doesn't incur a points hit where other managers might be doing so. Now, the good thing, I get Chris Wood on this strategy, whose ownership is going to be 150% plus, I imagine, with captaincies involved. I get to keep Cole Palmer for game week 30, and obviously I keep him for this team. I keep Mo Salah, I keep Alexander Isak, I keep Munoz. That's great. The downside is, well, the only downside is I don't have Erling Haaland, because yes, I could get to Bruno Fernandes in another strategy, which I'll show you in a minute, but I am then sacrificing other players, which we'll touch on. So this makes a lot of sense. And then coming into game week 30, just to give you a bit of an idea on what my team would look like. Of course, Alexander Isak would come back in. That's another positive, is that I'm keeping Alexander Isak in game week 30. Munoz will come in for Vandenberg. And then Mo Salah, of course, will come in for Mykolenko. Now, on the face of it, this team looks great. But I also would argue, with one free transfer available and a bit of money in the bank, if I could possibly get someone like a Mateta, that would feel fantastic in this week, but it would come down to the spending power, and I would only have 7.4 million available, so I would require a price drop of Mateta in order to get there, but that would be a really nice position to be in, but it would give me a little bit of a bench and headache. But you can see here in game week 30, I have a good team regardless, and I have Vardy at home against Leicester. The big concern, of course, is that I wouldn't have Erling Haaland at home against Leicester, but when have we ever been scared to captain Mo Salah? Never. So I would have him as my captain at home against Everton. Vice captaincy, take your pick. There are great options in this week. So this is the logical pick, but I gotta show you the Erling Haaland route to show you why there is at least a temptation for me to go there. So my other game week 29 team selection is, of course, bringing in Erling Haaland. And regardless, if I bring in Erling Haaland, it has to be for a points hit. And I do think if I'm going to take a points hit, I got to bring in big guns. And you can see at the top right here, the summary of my transfers. So Trent out to Vardy can still be afforded, and I think I would go there if I went down this route as opposed to the cheaper ones that we discussed. Isak to Erling Haaland. Now, I can do Cunha up to Erling Haaland, but then the midfielder of choice then does slightly diminish. And then we would be doing Mo Salah out for Bruno Fernandes. Now, that's scary because, as I mentioned, you lose a lot of value on Mo Salah. But I do think a wildcard in game week 31 allows me to buy him back. And I would have to make some sacrifices in the general team in terms of what I would have to pay additionally to get Mo Salah. But you can see here, the team looks good. I get Bruno Fernandes away against Leicester, and I get the rest of the team, and Vandenberg goes on the bench because, of course, the Wood team looks great, but if Vandenberg doesn't play, I'm down to 10 players. This guarantees me 11 players, but at the expense of a -4, but I get the best captain. The problems with this team, of course, I don't have a Chris Wood, which is not ideal because if he does well and Erling Haaland flops, then we are in a world of trouble, especially taking a -4. And I don't have Mo Salah because when we come into game week 30, this is how the team would look without any transfers being made. Now, it looks great. We got Haaland at home against Leicester. And if you're going down this route and you're not having Mo Salah, then you're kind of just accepting it. Because if you buy Haaland and people are keeping Mo Salah, then you're not going to captain Salah. So you're not going to benefit from owning him because his ownership will still be over 100%. The real risk, of course, going down this route is not having him at all. That would be really detrimental to the rank. And Bruno Fernandes away against Forest just doesn't look great either. So while it looks fantastic for 29, game week 30, I'm like, oh, it doesn't look all amazing. But with one free transfer, what I know I would do in this team, and it would be a little bit controversial, is selling Cunha and probably bringing in someone like Mateta that I previously wanted to bring in for that away game against Southampton and really going in on these upside picks. It would then mean possibly benching a popular player in the shape of Mbeumo or Vissa, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And the team would look like this. So effectively what you're doing is you've got Chris Wood in game week 30 versus Mateta in game week 30. And I would prefer Mateta. And in game week 29, of course, we are making the sacrifice of Mo Salah. So let me know in the comment section which one you prefer. I think the first option of going Chris Wood just makes a lot of sense. I'm not taking a -4 and the team is well set for game week 30, but you can at least understand why there is a temptation to go down this route with the upside of the players that we selected. And then in game week 30, the team still looks great with that intended transfer of bringing in Mateta. Let me know your preference in the comments. I'll be really interested to know. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 29 team selection of sorts. As you can see, I haven't locked anything in. It'll be even more of a priority to check out the deadline live stream tomorrow morning if you are interested on what direction this team is going to go. I hopefully will make a decision tonight, but who knows on that one. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions. I'm sure I have missed off some hot topics. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. Take care. Cheers.